On a modern truck, how do you make your auxiliary lights turn on and off with your headlights bright beam, the high beam? That's the question, and today we're going to solve the problem, and I'm going to show you how to do it. This will apply to all modern CAN bus vehicles, not only just the Bronco or any of the Ford products, but you can do this on any of the modern vehicles. All you need is to have a fog light from the factory, because the factory wiring on all the modern vehicles turns off the fog lights when the high beams turn on. So the reason for this is because these XL80 lights, like many of the brighter driving lights, are not SAE road legal. And if you're driving on a back road and you're bumping around off-road and you want extra lighting, you want to turn on these bright lights, the best way to do it is just with your high beam switch. And then the best way to turn it off is with your high beam switch. You really don't want to be reaching around trying to fumble for whatever switch you have installed to activate those lights. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to need is a relay, and let me show you how to wire it. So the relay that we're using is from SPV Parts, and there's the part number. It'll also be linked below. Here is the relay. Now, any relay you're going to use for this function, you're going to need to have an 87A pin on it. Now we're essentially going to be wiring this reverse of a standard relay. Standard relay is going to activate when power is fed to it. In this case, we're going to activate when power is not fed to it. So it's the reverse of it. Now, first of all, what we're trying to do is a couple different functions. One is this auxiliary 2 input is the switch that's going to turn on and off the driving light. So when we have auxiliary 2 turned on, it's going to automatically turn on the XL80 driving lights. And 85 port is just going to a chassis ground. 86 port is going to the fog light power wire. So what's going to happen here is when the fog light is turned on, it's going to, in essence, switch the power to pin 87 from 87A. In essence, you're going to have these lights turn off when the fog lights turn on. So in a typical modern vehicle, when you turn on your brights, the fog lights will turn off. And then when the fog lights turn back on, it'll be under normal headlight mode. So when those turn back on, in essence, when your high beams turn off, your XL80s will turn on. So it's basically a reverse wiring. But what it allows for is you to control the XL80 lights naturally just by turning on and off the switch. So you have basically two ways of turning the lights on and off. Now, one of the things to pay attention to with what we're doing, we're using the factory auxiliary switch because we have a Ford, and any of the auxiliary switches for Fords, you'll want to look up the manual that shows the wiring diagram. And in our case, we have a Raptor, and you can see we're going to run into auxiliary 2. This is a 15 amp rated circuit. So what you want to make sure is anything you plug into that is less than 15 amps. In our case, the XL80 lights are 5.5 amps each for 11 amps total. So it's below the 15 amps, and we can run directly off of this power wire for the auxiliary switch straight into our relay, and then have our lights run straight to this 87A pin out, and then we'll run the factory fog light to the 86 pin, and then 85 straight to the ground. So let's go ahead and get this wired up and see if it works. So here's the relay harness, and if you disconnect it, you'll see each of these pins has a number by it. And so what you'll need to do is change which of these wires go to the different pins based on the wire diagram. So the best way to disconnect these is to use a small, you can use a paper clip or a little pin, and you can stick it down inside here to lift the little retaining and then pull this wire out and move the wires to the proper positioning so that when you plug in your relay, they will all be connected to the proper pinouts. So once you've got that ready to go, we'll basically just be mounting this and then connecting up the wires to these different wires, and then we'll be using a crimp connector and shrink wrap, and then we'll get it all powered up and see if it works. This is the bumper connector on the Raptor, and the manual says the auxiliary 1 is violet green stripe, which is this wire. We went ahead and turned on the vehicle and turned auxiliary 1 on and off and used a voltmeter to test that pin inside, and that indeed is auxiliary 1. So this is the wire we're going to tap into for our relay. Now this is the fog light wire, which is a brown wire, and we did the same thing where we turned on the vehicle, used the voltmeter on this pin inside, and verified it turned on and off with the vehicle. So we're going to splice into both of those wires and get it all to work on our relay. So we'll show you how we're running that up to the relay and see how it works. So this is the auxiliary 1, which is the violet light green, and we're using a butt connector, and we're connecting that to our wiring harness, and this is going to our S2 Baja Design lights. Now this auxiliary 1 will power up to 10 amps. We have two lights that are 1 amp each, so it's well underneath the power rating for it. And we're going to go ahead and just crimp these on, and then going to heat shrink it. These butt connectors are really neat. You always want to pull and make sure they got a nice good connection. We're going to heat shrink it and then just run this wire protector over top of it and then tape it up. So that's the first connection we're going to make. The second connection we're going to make is the fog light, and that's this brown wire here. And we're going to run that to this red wire, and that's going to go up to our relay. So I'm going to go ahead and snip this guy, and I'm leaving just enough on here so if we ever needed to or wanted to reconnect and use this original connector, we could do that because there's just enough length there to work with still. Here's the bumper connector ready to go. We should get some cloth tape, and we'll probably replace this with the cloth tape, the factory style, but it should keep it nice and protected. You can see the sheathing is really nice for keeping the wiring protected there. So we're going to go ahead and get this plugged in, and then this wire is the one that's going to be running up to our relay. So that's what we're going to be routing next. So here's our relay, and we've gone ahead and crimp connected and heat shrunk all the connections. So this goes to the XL80 light that we were powering. This is the fog light trigger wire, and this is the wire that's feeding power from the auxiliary 2, which is a green and maybe purple or brown wire there. So that's going to be in the manual. And then we'll just need to connect up these ground wires, and we'll be able to test fit it. We're going to try to connect this relay to this existing bolt here, so it just hangs off of that. That way we're not drilling extra holes in it. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get this all secured up, and we'll show you what it looks like and then test it out. All right, looking in the engine bay, you can see how we tidied up all the wiring there. And then looking underneath the fender area, you can see our wire routing pathway. We wanted to keep it all nicely tucked up, make sure it's not going to rub on anything, and secured. Keep it nice and clean. All right, we're going to go ahead and test the lights. First, let's turn on the auxiliary 1, which is going to turn on the S2 corner lights. Those are hooked directly to the auxiliary switches. Next, we'll turn on auxiliary 2. That's going to turn on the XL80 lights in the front. And then we're going to go ahead and turn on the fog lights, the factory fog lights, and those are going to turn off the XL80s. Now we're going to turn on the brights. When we turn on the truck brights, it's going to turn the XL80s on, and that's with the fog lights turned on. So as soon as we turn off the brights, we'll see the XL80s turn back off, and then we can also control the XL80s with the factory auxiliary 2 switch, and we can just turn that on and off like that, and it will turn the lights on and off. So it allows us to basically control our lights just standard with auxiliary switch, or have them auto turn on and off with the brights, with the high beams. Pretty neat. That wraps up our wiring, fancy wiring for our driving lights And if you have any questions, feel free to post them up in the comments below. This great solution to allow your accessory lights to turn on with your brights. And like I said, this can be used on any of the modern CAN bus style vehicles where you can't just tap into the high beam wire at the headlamps, because all of these new headlamps are all computer controlled. So there's no power that turns on with the bright high beams. So pretty cool. It's sweet that that all works, and I think it came together pretty nice. If you have anything that you need, check out the description below. We'll have links to the different products. And stay tuned for our next video. We will be taking a look at the winch, setting up the new thimble, and the best drum attachment option for the winch rope. Stay tuned for that. We'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.